So the first thing we need to do is we need to take this clutch cover off. But one thing to mention is that if you're going in for anything other than a bad clutch, meaning a tube nut or something, you can actually leave this on the kickstand and you don't need to drop your oil. But since we are going to be having this up on the table anyway, because we're doing a second gear fix, we've already drained the oil out and it's easier to show you this way. So first thing you need is you need an 8mm socket, ratchet, pry bar probably, because you've got a couple dowels here that you have to pull out, a rubber mallet, and then a 10mm to get into the clutch hub once we get in. We have not been into this motor. This has just got on the table last night, so we have no idea what we're going to see when we do this. Now, you don't need to worry about the order of all these bolts that are in here, because there's going to be a couple of them that are longer and pretty easy to tell where they are. There's going to be 3 that have an oil washer on them, and we're going to show you how to put that back together and exactly where they go. So I'm going to go ahead and pull these off now. You can use a ratchet, you can use a screw gun, anything you want, as long as you don't strip the head of the bolt off. Okay, so I'll go ahead and pull all these out. You can go ahead and throw these in a bin or wherever you want to put them. So now at this point, the easiest thing to do is take a rubber mallet and just gently tap. You'll hear a sound as it changes. So there's a spot down on the bottom here that you can grab onto. You can rock it. Sometimes it won't come, so keep tapping it, and you'll see it start to separate. What you're trying to do is you're trying to save this gasket. So you just gently rock it. Like I said, you got to release it from the dowels. And if you can do it, bring it out, bring it down, and you can actually pull it off. Now in this case, the gasket actually stuck, so we're going to need a new gasket. Usually about 80% of the time you can save it, but it just depends. This one will need a new gasket. So at that point, you're going to have to pull this off. You're going to have to clean everything, which we'll get into in a little while. So the main reason the clutch fails is that it's not adjusted correctly. And we're going to go over how to do that at the end of the video, but here's how it works. This arm is where your clutch cable is actually hooked up to. And when you squeeze your lever, this arm gets pulled down, which then turns this spline shaft here, causing a rod that pushes into a little ball, and that ball then pushes into another rod that goes across the engine. On the other side within the clutch basket is where you have what you've heard people talk about as the pin, and that's your internal adjustment. But that pin then pushes against your pressure plate, which then disengages your clutch. And if that is not adjusted correctly, you will have problems. And you can see this in the image here where the arrows are. Right here, this is your actual pressure plate. Now, when you squeeze your clutch, basically your clutch cable comes down, it pulls that arm down, and you'll see how it's disengaging right here and goes back in. It's going to disengage again, it's going to go back in. So what happens is that actual rod that goes across that we talked about, and remember I mentioned a pin, this is your pin right here. This is actually your internal adjustment. You're supposed to have some free play in here. Now this particular one does not have free play, which concerns me. So we'll see what happens inside. As of right now, the plates do look a little dark, but we have not been into this yet. But what happens is that when you're riding and you throttle hard on the bike, it ends up basically putting pressure on your cable, which puts pressure on your clutch arm, which actually is supposed to have that little bit of slop. That way this plate does not disengage. Now, when it disengages like this, that means that your plate is riding off of that outermost clutch plate, and it's going to spin and it's going to cause heat. And when that causes heat, it just is a bad thing. It starts to basically wear your clutch plate, it glazes them, and it just goes progressively downhill after that. So it's imperative that you have that internal adjustment correct. And I get a lot of people that tell me they followed YouTube videos and they've done clutches and they've only lasted 500 miles or 1,000 miles, and they're all upset and they're talking horrible about the M109, when in fact that's not the case. The case is that whoever did the clutch did not do the proper internal adjustment, and you will never have a clutch that lasts if you do that way. We're going to show you how to do this, and you will not have any problems moving forward. So it's time to get in. Let's pull our clutch plates out. Not going to worry about order. We're going to show you how to put this all back together later. All you're going to do is rip this stuff out. So first thing you need is a 10mm socket, and we've got 6 bolts and springs we need to pull out. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and pull off the pressure plate. Now you may have plates sticking to it depending on the situation. I use magnets and picks. Got 2 90-degree picks, whatever. You can get in here and pull it off. Now, this clutch, so you can look and see there's some grooving on the pressure plate. So doesn't look horrible. Probably going to recommend to the customer that he should replace these plates, but we're going to take a look at them and see first. The other thing to mention is you're going to pull this pin out and just set it aside. Inside this pressure plate, there is a washer right here. You can either leave the washer in there or you can just pull it out, and you're going to stick it on top of the bearing on the pin. Just don't lose it. And it just sits like that. So I'm going to set that there. I'm going to set the pressure plate over here. Now we're just going to pull everything out of here. So the best thing to do is, like I said, take a couple picks. Now, this is the outer plate. You can see how burnt that is. Still plenty of meat on it, but it's definitely been hot, and it's hot because of that adjustment was wrong. So we'll go ahead and pull the rest out. They're kind of sticking together. Yeah, he's going to definitely want a new clutch because you can see looking at these steel plates. Let me get the magnets here. It's easier if you use 2 magnets, but you can look and see how dark this is. It's not horrible. Now, as we get further in, the clutch doesn't look bad. I think he was in the early stages of losing this clutch based on that adjustment. That worked out nice. This is why I don't worry about an order when it comes out, because the wave washer came out earlier than if you looked in the diagram in the manual. But we'll go ahead and get this all out. Then we'll show you these plates, and we'll talk about the order and how they'll go back in. Now, this is the other drive plate towards the motor. Look how dark that is. So he's going to definitely want to go with a new clutch on this one. And then basically, you got the main drive plate in here. So not horrible. So at this point, this is where you have to make a decision. If your clutch is screwed up and has a lot of residual in here, okay? So this one doesn't look bad because it wasn't eating anything. It's just getting brown. But he was probably not too far out of having major clutch issues. And then what happens is you look in here and you'll be able to take your finger or rag and you'll pull all this residual to clutch fibers. If that happens, you can actually get the fibers go down into your oil pan. Your oil pan, I'm just going to pull this gasket away so you can see. This is where the oil pan is right here. So as the oil goes through your clutch, it gets down into this oil pan. You've got some screens down there, some sump screens. And if they get clogged, you get oil deprivation and you can end up blowing your motor up. So even though you think it's not going to happen, we see it happen all the time. So if you start seeing a lot of residual in here, you'll check up in the video here. We'll put a link up to another do-it-yourself video of us doing an oil pan and showing you start to finish how to do that. But you're going to go ahead and want to do that. Then you'll come back and you'll put this back together. So time to install the clutch. So what you're going to need to do a clutch install is a 10mm and 12mm wrench plus a Phillips. That's for your internal adjustment with a pin. An 8mm and a 10mm socket. So the first thing you do is you're going to grab the plate with the gears, so to speak, the cogs or whatever on the inside. That's your very first plate. That's going to go in just like that. Then after that, you're going to have a wave washer and a wave washer seat. So your wave washer, if you look at it, you'll see it's conical. It's got like a curved side. So this conical side right here, the curved side, goes in towards the motor. So you're going to set that in like that. And then you have a wave washer seat with just a flat washer that goes in on top. So that's the beginning. Now, what you're going to do at this point is you're going to grab plates. And the very first one that you're going to have is going to have fiber on one side, and it's going to have steel on the other. The fiber goes towards the motor on this one. And when you look down in, there's grooves, so you have to line it up. And it's a little bit of a pain in the butt. You take it right in. So now you'll notice that you have actually just steel showing. So now you're going to want to go with a fiber on both sides. This can get a little bit messy just because, you know, if you've had it sitting in oil, which you should, but you just get that set in, hopefully. And then you're going to go with one that's just steel only. And you're basically going to alternate this till you get to the end. So you've got your steel. Now we're going to do a fiber. Now we're going to do a steel. And then we're going to do a fiber. If I can get it out of this oil. What a mess. This clutch is going to be nice and good. Now we're going to go steel. Fiber. Get it line up. Wait, that one's being rough on me. There you go. Now we're going to go steel again. And you're going to do fiber. This is fiber on both sides. Now, when that goes in, that's the end of the individual steels and fibers. The very last plate that you're going to use is going to be like the very first one, which is fiber on one side and steel on the other. In this case, you want the steel to match up to this, and you want the fiber facing out because this is where your pressure plate's going to be. So at that point, you now have your pin. And on your pin that you've taken out, you should have a little bearing and then a washer. If this washer's not here, don't panic. It usually sits right inside your pressure plate right here. So you can leave it there. It doesn't matter. I just have it out on this one. But you're going to set that in, and you're going to go ahead and put your pressure plate on. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to put all of our springs in. Now these should only go to about 4 foot-pounds. I don't even torque these, to be honest with you. We've done in the past, but now we just do it by feel. We know when it's tight. But if you're trying to torque it, it's 48 inch-pounds. But as long as it's snug, you don't want to overdo this because then you're going to end up breaking them off. And that's a whole other problem in itself. So we'll go ahead and tighten these up. Now when you do this, you're going to want to do this in a star pattern. So you're going to take it in. Now that you have that in, what I like to do is I like to take my ratchet and I like to just go around, just make sure that it feels nice and snug, which this one does. Just a little bit. Okay. Okay. So now your clutch is in. So now we need to do an internal adjustment. So to do the internal adjustment is this pin right here. And this is where your 10 millimeter, your 12 millimeter, and your Phillips comes in. Now, on the other side of the bike, your clutch cable must be loose. So you can screw it in all the way at the top, or you can undo it at the bottom. It doesn't matter as long as the arm on the other side, which I described earlier in this video, is up and there's no pressure on it, you'll be fine. So basically what you do here is your 12 millimeter needs to sit right here on this shaft. And what you do is you're going to take your screwdriver, you're going to take it all the way in till you just feel resistance. So going in, I just feel resistance there. So you want to go between 1/2 and 3/4 back. And you can use the tip of the screwdriver, which has like 4 quadrants on it, and just go back. It doesn't have to be exact, just needs to be between 1/2, really 1/2 and a 1, but we do usually about 1/2 to 3/4. So we would do 1, 2, and about 3. Now what I do is I just put my chest or my stomach on there, because what you need to do is you need to tighten up this jam nut right here. It doesn't need to be really, really tight, just nice and snug. When you're done, you should have just a little bit of play. You can hear it. That's all you want. And your clutch adjustment's done. Now, don't worry about these, but We actually have these. So when we do the clutch cover and we do the stator cover, we just screw them in. It makes it so much easier to get the cover on. So you slide the gasket on and it holds it, and then you put this on. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put this cover on, and then I'll show you where the bolts go. When you do it like this, it makes it very easy. Now your cover's on. So now we have some screws. And as far as these bolts, so to speak, you have two long ones. All the other ones are going to be the same, but there's 3 of them that have little washers on there, and it's important you get those in the right spot. So I will show you exactly where those go. Let's get and take this out. So you got your 2 long ones are going to go on the side over here. Then what I do is I start with these washer ones. So looking at the washer ones, one goes here. So you're going to put one in right here. And then you've got one that goes to the next to it right here. Okay. Then you count from this one 5 down. And it's going to be this bottom one right here. That's going to be the last one. Every other screw that goes in is going to be all the same, all the way around. There is no torque setting again for this, but if you look in the manual, they talk about the size of these bolts. You're probably around 7 foot-pounds. We treat it like we do with the clutch springs. We go until they're snug and just barely a little cinch on there because it's not going to leak. So go ahead and knock this out. And if you do have a little screw gun like I'm using, make sure you have one that has a clutch on it. That way you don't overshoot it. Or make sure that you just run them up until they're tight and then do them by hand. We kind of know on these like where our clutch should be. So we'll go ahead and, where's this? The 8mm, yep. So we'll go ahead and start. And what I do is I like to do top and bottom and kind of go back and forth. Oh, and I'm spinning up, speeding up this part of the video. So at this point, just back to using our ratchet. And what I do is I put my hand over the head of it. That doesn't, it makes it so where you don't have a ton of torque. And then I'll just go around just to where it's about as tight as I can make it. And then I'm done. Yeah, I forgot that one. Nope. Left it up to you, I would have had it dead on the money. As you would say, put it on 6. Okay. That's it. Now that we're all tight, and everything feels good, the next step would be is to go ahead and do the adjustment on the other side of the bike, which is your clutch cable or a hydraulic clutch. You'd hook that back up. And we will get to that shortly. Cut. Okay, time to adjust the clutch cable. Now that your clutch is back together, it's time to take care of this. This should already be all the way in right here, and that's what you want. So you've got a lot of play right now. So we're going to go ahead and go down to the bottom, and I'm going to show you how to set the bottom up. Ideally, what you want to do at the bottom is you want to get this to where it's about like this. You're going to have a little bit of play in it, and then we'll do a final adjustment, and I'll show you how it is. Okay, so here's your lower adjustment right here. So the way this works is if you take this cable down from here, that tightens your lever up top. If you take it up, it loosens your lever. So what I like to do is I like to start kind of in the middle. Your lever's all the way in, as we showed you shortly, before in the video. And then what you'll do is kind of pull down on the cable and watch your lever till you see that it tightens up top. Then you take this screw down and take this one up. And I leave them just finger tight until either me or somebody up top can wiggle the lever and I can take a look at it instead of having to get up and down. You just want some play up in the lever up top. If you don't have any play, if it's too tight, then obviously this is down too far. You need to take this nut up and bring this one up. If it's way too loose up top, then you're going to bring the bottom nut down and you're going to bring the top nut down, taking out that slack up top. You want to get it so there's, maybe 3 or 4 quarters up top. Then you're going to tighten these down, and then we'll go up top and take a look at it. Okay, so we're back up top. We're taking a look at this lever. Now, see, you got some slop in there. It's about, 2 quarters or so. Could use a little bit more in this one. I'll go back down and adjust this one in a minute. Just a tiny bit more. But if it was too loose at this point, undo this and just bring this out some and then lock down your jam nut. Ideally, you would like to have about that much free play, which is about where I'm at. So now what you do is get on the bike, hold the clutch in, and you're going to start the bike up. I do it in gear. If the bike tries to creep on you, you know that this is too loose. You have issues. If the bike doesn't creep on you, and I hold the brake and I let go of the brake to do this, and if the bike starts to walk, then there's a problem. If the bike doesn't walk, kick it up into neutral. If it goes butter smooth in neutral, then you know you have this really close, if not dead on, and you're good to go at that point. If the bike's creeping, that means your pressure plate's still engaged. It means that you are too loose here. So you'll need to take a little bit out of this. You can do it right from the top at this point because you brought this in and did your adjustment on the bottom. Now you have plenty up here. You can tighten this up a little bit and see if that helps.